Welcome to Berlin, Germany for more Worlds 2019. The play-ins group stage concludes with Group C and D, where we've seen some new names take to the international stage. After today, some of these legends will continue their journey, while others will get a major setback. Hello, everybody. I'm EpicSkillshot, bringing you the final day of play-ins group alongside Ejim and Frostgurn. And what a roller coaster it has been. 2 teams eliminated, 4 teams already through to the knockout stage. Frost, it's one more day of groups.
Yeah, the one more day, and I think we might have another nail biter on our hands because a lot of these groups are kind of splitting up into the air, and I'm curious what's going to all shake out.
And that's the thing, we had the 1-1-1-1, the 2-2-2-2. Like, is it going to be the same for Group C here today? Are we getting more tiebreakers? Who knows?
I did not wear a tie today because I don't want tiebreakers, but we'll find out if we get them. Look, yesterday we saw 4 teams advance from Groups A and B, while some other teams got their dreams crushed. Let's start with Splice and Isurus Gaming. First and foremost, Frost, Splice taking first in the group. They did drop a single game, but it was somewhat the expected results.
Yeah. Splice, Clutch, they all got out in the first pool 1C. We expected that. That said, there is some room for growing pains here. I don't think Chachi is necessarily having the strongest tournament of his career right now, and as we look into knockout stage, there is some tightening up that needs to happen, and I think the same thing can be said when you look at someone like Isurus Gaming.
Yeah, 100%. Like you mentioned it for Splice, but Isurus were much more favoured to even be a stronger opponent into Dead FM going into this group. People were saying maybe they can actually make it out first seed. Like, do Splice look good coming into groups play-ins? And unfortunately for Isurus, as you mentioned, there is some room to go upwards.
There absolutely is. Now, Isurus Gaming did take second in the group. This does mean Dead FM were knocked out. But for Isurus, what was our anticipation and you know, in review, what was the performance like versus expectations? I mean, Seiya in particular for me was a little bit of a dud because I expected more from him.
I will definitely take the flame on this one. I was the person who really came in for Isurus Gaming, and I was in full support of them. Watching their macro play, especially domestically, hyper impressed with it. That said, on the international stage, Seiya and Audi in particular fell flat in terms of mechanical performance. I think day number 1 especially was really tough for them. Seiya was just kind of running it down in a couple of games, and that's not usually what you expect. So are they simply just outclassed on an international stage, or did they just have a bad day? That's what today will decide.
And it's already like we've seen games be saved by Warungalus, right? Like, he's coming in fresh onto the roster this year, and certainly is a young rookie player that the team is built around, and him having to kind of bridge the gap for the veterans on the international stage isn't something we really expected. Well,
we do say goodbye to Detonation FM, who finished 3rd in the group. The LJL has been eliminated from the play-ins group stage after really showing up at MSI earlier this year. Seros and crew couldn't make it work. They had that 60-minute epic with Seros on Ziggs, and the thing is, it just felt like DFM just weren't really with what you needed to do to win at Worlds.
Yeah, potentially. Like, they are a weird team. They've traditionally always played weird stuff, and coming in, it just wasn't working. Not much proactivity in a group that proactivity could have been like a big prize for them in the early game, and yeah, bowing out like this is certainly disappointing for the LJL fans.
Let's turn our attention very quickly to Group A, where Clutch secured the first seed. They managed to break the Rochambeau just in time. What is a Rochambeau?
Rochambeau! It's rock, paper, scissors.
Paper, scissors.
Oh, maybe I'm the one that doesn't know that. But nevertheless, Clutch came out on top. Look, this was the group that ended 2-2-2 in the tiebreaker scenario that the fastest win times, which means they were automatically seeded into knockouts. But then they obliterated the Unicorns of Love.
And that's the question. Which one is the real Clutch? Because they certainly lived up to their namesake when push came to shove, and they needed to find that win to secure the first seed coming out of the group. But is this actual growing pains? Was this arrogance? Was this warm-up? I don't really know. There's a lot of volatility in kind of what iteration of what team you're going to get on what day.
And I think that is somewhat expected for this Clutch roster. There were some questions in terms of like ramping up towards the end of the season. They are a volatile, ambitious, creative. All of these words describe this team. So to see some faltering in the early stages of the tournament wasn't all that surprising for me.
But the only word that I actually want from a Pool 1 team is consistent.
Yes,
and until I get that word, then I'm not like, that bet feels very unsafe.
All right, we'll have to see how that works out. Of course, Unicorns of Love, they picked up the 2nd seed. They took down Mammoth in the tie-breaker game, and this was the team, this was the group that was rock, paper, scissors until those tie-breakers. UOL advanced to the knockout stage, and we'll see if they can do some damage there.
Okay, so UOL, I had a lot of favorites on. I watched them domestically. I thought, okay, I think they're the strongest of the emerging regions. I'm actually going to pull back a little bit on that statement. I still think that you got to see a lot of good things from UOL, but I think, again, in the same vein where Isurus Gaming gaming are being outclassed in certain positions at this international stage, I think the same thing can be said for UOL, and that's where they start to be exploited. I think Eddie in particular is having a weaker tournament, and until his performance really cleans up for how influential he is for this team, UOL are going to be that inconsistent bet.
Well, of course, that means UOL, they turn their attention to the knockout stage, and we have to say goodbye to Mammoth. We memed a lot on the analyst desk. We've had a lot of fun with it, Bryce. But as it stands, Mammoth, they had a few moments of hope, but it wasn't enough, especially in that clutch tiebreaker match.
Yeah, certainly, right? That was a very one-sided affair. And I think for Oceanic fans, for myself, everybody back home, and even the team, this was a tournament where we saw two very different Mammoths. People critiquing them, saying they only have one playstyle. When they got it, they can win games. And towards the end of their run here at Worlds, I feel like they strayed further and further away. So a bit of a disappointing end here for OS.
And that's unfortunately kind of the real talk. I was not the biggest Mammoth fan because I didn't like their playstyle. Demonte said that if you play scaling like that, it's safe, but it's not optimal. And I think, like you're saying, as the tournament rocked on, people got used to it. They knew what picks they needed to do. They knew that you take power away from triple. And ultimately, this team was not versatile enough to go the distance.
On this stage against the opponents in their group,
And I will say the one thing is that at the end of day number one, it was like 1-1 apiece all over the place. This did go to tiebreakers. So I've seen some very harsh words at Mammoth on the Twitter sphere and stuff like that. And a single game on an opponent they were already 2-0 up cost them their run. It could have been much closer, but it just wasn't.
The thing that sucks the most is they are bearing the weight of the years of frustrations.
Yes.
And this was their first tournament. But look, DFM and Mammoth, they're the first two teams to fall at the end of today. Two more teams will be eliminated from Plains groups. We'll find out who they are. Before we get to the drama, the action, the suspense, we've decided to gather some of the best Twitter moments because we've got some of the best players on stage. And we're going to look at your hot takes. I always get nervous when we do hot takes because I don't quite know what's going to be coming up. So the very first hot take from Twitter is the Unicorns, and they are giving a thumbs up to their tilt-proof jungler. Now, wait, remind me, was this the UOL clutch game?
Yes, absolutely well-deserved. This is a guy, his mid laner is being dove at 4 minutes, and he's literally level 1, killing a small wolf for level 2. This was the most depressing start to a game for a jungler, and this is, he needs this.
Yeah, I think the context is important here. I think everyone saw Lyra just absolutely smash in the early game, took their hands off the keyboard, like, GG, go next. And then the fact that they end up winning. I love the fact that it's Cloud9 that posts this. And she's just, like, twisting the knife.
Is that subtext? Is that Cloud9 also calling out clutch? You know, like a little subtext?
It should be.
Or are we reading too much into it? Okay, awesome. Next one. Second up, the LEC Twitter account used the marathon game between Isurus and DFM as firepower. So this was that 60-minute game that had 8 Barons, 17 Elders, 1 million Dragons, and this game is almost as long as the entire G2 versus TL series. I actually saw Medic say if you include picks and bans.
No, it doesn't.
I saw Medic tweet, if you include picks and bans, it was longer.
No, I think if you're not EU, like this hurts just because of League of Legends, right? That was like a sad way to go out to the end of the tournament.
No,
it just gets like super, like more and
this
more
is the wrong
one-sided.
audience, sir.
It was just like,
come on,
bro. Like, what is this?
Okay, that was spitting a little bit of fire. All right, we're turning to another EU, actually. Vedius never gives up on Detonation Focus Me in Japan. So I guess this is during the 60-minute game, is that right?
I think this is during the 60-minute game. If you check the timestamp on this, though, I don't know why Vedius continued to back this after they made such, they destroyed his boy Nocturne mid. They went for the Black Cleaver static Shiv build, and he still had faith in them.
Yeah, but Andy always has like blind faith in the LJL. It's just his thing, isn't it?
I think it's respectable. At a certain point, just going down with the ship, like it has to be done.
All right, we've got another one here. Clutch had a solid lead in the tiebreaker game, but Vedius did his best to jinx it. So Clutch had the tiebreaker. There's no way Clutch loses this game. And Raz was not a happy man.
No, Vedius, delete this. Vedius, you're doing some stupid shit right now. I'm sorry. I cannot allow this to be on my screen for too damn long. Do not curse Clutch.
I'm not surprised to hear Raz get such support.
Yeah, I actually really love these things from Raz. There's so many. If you scroll his media, it's just these videos after these videos constantly.
And to be fair, Raz did coach for Dignitas, so with the rebrand, he's got some affiliation with Clutch.
Now, Raz will be joining for the group stage onwards, and I wonder if we should ask him or interview him about all the new Dignitas memes, because there was Throw It Baron, and now there's Throw It Herald.
I think Chakras had the banger of the tweet where he was like, I see Dignitas has taken over the throws at Herald.
They're evolving. Raz, what's your opinion on that one? Look, we've got one more tweet that is less of a hot take and a little bit more of a request. So don't you worry, Cartman. Frosk is ready to explain why this Vlad build.
Okay, so I got the honor of casting Nuguri's Pocket Vladimir the other day and his banker build. So let's take a look at what makes this pick so deadly and his unique way of building the champion. For that match into Renekton, Nuguri took Klepto and Domination, opting for the Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter in the Domination tree due to the matchup. Now, these combined sustain options would help keep him topped up and in the lane as long as possible and what could be a very volatile matchup. Now, while Klepto isn't that far out of the wheelhouse, Nuguri and Showmaker both sport the Klepto Bros moniker for their preference for the rune choice, which allows them to get more literal bang for their buck off their superior laning abilities. Talk to Atlas, and it's as he says, it's cashing in on being better than your opponent. So let's actually take a look at the build. It was Ionian Boots, Seeker's Arm Guard into a completed Death Cap and a Nomad's Coin. This build provides burst, econ, and CDR. Emphasis on the cooldown reduction because Vladimir is a champion that's usually level dependent to get more points into that queue and keep up the ability to spam. Now, historically, Nuguri has innovated on Vladimir in pro play by rushing the CDR cap around level 9 to 10, making Vlad spike exceptionally early in matches and being ready for team fighting. And that's where Nuguri's Vlad really shines. This itemization late game also allows him to bring wards through the upgraded medallion. So theoretically, he could split push safely with his own vision. It also gives him that active, speedy flank potential that the Proto Belt would have provided. And that's the primary comparison in this build versus the more traditional Proto Belt one. Strictly speaking, in CDR, it's a cheaper stop in the itemization for the CDR cap stats rather than investing fully for the Proto Belt. Now, I'm sure Nuguri will continue to do damage and completely devastate with this champion if it gets through ban phase, but I have a feeling we might see some more Vladimir bans.
It was actually really cool because after you had set up the expectations in the build, there was some clips there behind you showing not only what he was doing in the side lanes and putting pressure, but then exploding kids in team fights. It's terrifying.
Yeah, he walks in, ulti damages everyone, and then Nuclear picks up a triple kill. Yeah, that's a good time.
Very nicely done. I think you actually used the words, it wasn't his damage, right?
Because Atlas goes, and it's Nuclear with the triple. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was Vlad.
It really stuck with me because it was both being like, oh no, you did not give praise to the right person, but also just calling how terrifying the build was. So very nicely done. We'll see if we get more Nuguri Vlad today. Much in thanks to Crimson Reaper. Nuguri and Damwon are undefeated so far, and they're followed by Brazil's heroes Flamengo. In Group C, however, it is wide open. All three teams are tied going into one-on-one. As we continue with the rest of Countdown, we will just be talking about the two teams that play today, and the headline act, Damwon Gaming. They're 2-0. I've asked every other analyst on Countdown so far their opinion. Frosk is now your chance. The way they went 2-0, is it as you expected?
No, and I think to quote Damwon, they said it best, and that it felt like a 10 out of 100, where there was kind of a clear blueprint for how to crack this team, and it started in the bot lane.
Yeah, it certainly did. Like, their solo lane is incredibly hard to punish, and I think the thing with Damwon as they progress through the tournament is it may kind of feel futile. Like, attacking the bottom lane, Royal Youth in their very first game got a super big advantage, but at the end of the day, you're highlighting that man's Vladimir. Like, the solo lane has just come back swinging 2 times.
And it's also the question of, are they simply just experimenting or warming up on the main stage? This is what we're going to keep asking about our Pool 1 seeds in Clutch, Splice, and Damwon. They can always just go back to playing the defensive bot lanes because they were playing to attack with Nuclear and Barrel right there. He played Leona and Pyke, I believe, is kind of his first 2 picks. And normally it's, you know, he is a playmaking with his Alistar, but they usually play much more defensive in that bot lane.
Yeah, and I will say the one thing about Damwon, like, if people are disappointed in them so far, like, it's important to note that, yes, expectations are high, but if you think about them, the players, the team, this is all new to them, right? First time Worlds, like, a little bit of consideration, and I think they will ramp up heavily towards the end of the tournament.
It's so weird criticizing a team that went 2-0 was never risk of losing, but it was like you judge the manner in which they won, and it's your expectations from a Pool 1 seed. The teams they beat, however, Brazil and TCL, CBLOL TCL, as well as it's Royal and Flamengo. Let's talk a little bit about these two matchups. It feels to me like Flamengo are just one step above Royal. They had a very convincing win, especially with BRTT priority on that Draven, and I want to see what they can do against Damwon today.
Yeah, and I think it was a little bit unexpected coming in. A lot of people sitting with Royal Youth as maybe the favorites coming in. Obviously, the fans in the venue, absolutely not. Brazilian fans were absolutely popping off for this one, but they got to play their style. Early game aggression through their superstar AD carry and BRTT, and it looked good.
And I'm going to go on the record and say it. I know that I've been quite vocal about Unicorns of Love, but after seeing all of the emerging regions, Pool 2 and Pool 3, I think Flamengo are the strongest emerging region team at this tournament right now. I think they have the talent across multiple positions where they're not being exploited as some of the other emerging regions are. And I think their macro is really clean. The way that they spot opportunities, their Baron setup, their ability to snowball, I was very impressed with some of the maneuvers that they were doing. I think they're scary.
Now, the thing that's going to be interesting to watch is we assume both of these teams are most likely to be defeated by Damwon, and therefore their matchup will determine who's going to be advancing. They play completely differently, Ejim. For Royal Youth, it's all about Armit in the top lane, and for Flamengo, it's all about BRTT in the bottom.
Yeah, certainly. Like we highlighted already Flamengo in their bottom side, and unfortunately for Royal Youth, I think they're one of the teams in play-ins already that have shown two drastically different things. We come in, play through the top side, get some early game priority up there and have a game plan, but then they've gone for some weird compositions, the super negative, the Karthus, the Azir, mid 2 versus 2, and it just doesn't really look like them.
And that's the thing that I really want to underline that I'm glad Ejim brings up is the Karthus pick. If you go back and watch that VOD, there was 5 jungle bans, and it was the Lee Sin that was picked by Flamengo, and then it went through secondary bans before Closer had to grab something like a Karthus. He didn't get the winning lane matchups, he didn't get a proactive jungler, and I think that's immediately the thing that Royal will twist and turn, and it's going to be, yes, a split map, top versus bot, but it'll start with these junglers.
It absolutely will, and if I remember correctly, they are game 5 on the day. We'll find out in just a moment. Let's turn our attention to Group C, who we've not touched on just yet, the Southeast Asian Clash. This was the group that could have been defined by Season 8 of Game of Thrones. It was one team was winning until they weren't, and there was so many surprises. We saw the Pantheon, we saw the Baron fights, we saw the surprises, and I'm hoping for less surprises today.
Yeah, we saw the first time Quinn that came out and won a gateful. Like first pick Renekton has been everywhere, but this is a very weird group to look at. They have been playing a lot of the similar stuff. It is very messy, it is very scrappy, and at the end of the day, it's very hard to predict who's going to come out on top here.
And I think a part of that is kind of the variance and volatility and the mechanical ability of individual performers. You have a game where G4 will go through in Syndra and he will miss every single scatter of the week, and then you'll have a game where he'll start popping off onto the Pantheon. So it's kind of like, what bag are you going to get? And until everyone, if it's stage jitters or just confidence, just like chills out and plays their game, it's really hard to measure here.
I have a very difficult question that I only want team name answers for because we have an entire day to give the context. Of the 3 teams in Group C, Hong Kong Attitude, Mega, and Low Key, which 2 advance?
I think it's Low Key and Hong Kong Attitude.
Yes. Okay, now I go second, so I feel like I'm copying, but absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Right, I didn't actually think it was going to be that easy. I was kind of trying to look for some.
You know who I am, Trevor?
Let's take a look at the matches today. Obviously, we open with Damwon versus Royal, and we'll be swapping between groups as the day goes out. Any and all tiebreakers will be played at the end of the day, up to a maximum of 4, and it'll be very interesting. Frost, what games are you most excited for?
I mean, I think the obvious one, Ejim already brought it up, game number 5, because we expect that this will come down to CBLOL versus TCL. And the thing is they don't have to play Damwon. They can't get drawn into that best of 5. So
that's a huge bonus.
Exactly. They don't have to face the scariest Pool 1 team.
Actually, that's super important to note as well, because all the teams that qualified yesterday are going to be watching today with bated breath. We'll be doing the knockout draw at the end of today, but Ejim, which games have your eyes?
I just think Damwon games in general, given what we've seen and a lot of international fans and a lot of hype, you just have to look at those 2 performances and not even comparing them against their opponents, but comparing them to what their expectations are.
Yeah.
What do they look like?
They're playing themselves more than anything else, really, and their own hype.
They're playing the clock.
The clock is a very good one, actually. Look, I want to see what low-key esports can do. The VCS definitely won me over the last years, and we'll find out a little later today. But before we get to any of that, let's take a closer look at the players from Group C and D. Here's Jake.
Thank you so much, Trevor. And I thought that with so much on the line today that we would take a closer look at some of the star players or players to watch in Group C and D. Kicking it off is everyone's favorite mid laner in this group in Showmaker. Now, coming into this tournament, the LCK sported some of the best mid laners, and Showmaker was known for his early game performances. But it's also the versatility that this player brings to Summoner's Rift. The ability to be able to go top lane on a pick like Renekton, completely shut down Flamengo goes Robo and team up with Canyon and single-handedly justify Renekton's priority in this. He's got some great stats in this tournament, and I think that he is going to be one of those solo laners to watch on Down One Gaming. They really do team up to do it all. Between Nuguri and Showmaker, you have a couple of very good laners, but also two fantastic team fighters. And you can see that his KDA is incredibly high. Kills plus assists at 15 minutes are also dominant. Moving on to Loki, it's actually Artifact, their mid laner, that I would like to take a closer look at. Artifact is one of the players coming into this game that is very consistent in an inconsistent group. His Tristana was amazing, able to show off great playmaking ability and attacking side lanes to generate pressure advantages for his team. He's also the only mid laner so far that we've seen play into the Pantheon as a Kali. And whilst he was solo killed early, his individual skill was able to bring Loki back into that game and start to mount the comeback. Now, obviously, that game still ended in a defeat, but Loki's chances of getting out of this group definitely will hinge on Artifact's performances. Finally, I want to take a look at Royal Youth's jungler in closer. His Kiana against a heavily favored Damn One Gaming lineup was absolutely beautiful to watch. We thought that they were going to attack the bottom lane early, and Closer ensured that Pilot and Armor were able to generate these advantages. But it wasn't just a laning phase. He then utilized his lead to generate picks around the map and continue to put out pressure through individual skill making on the key pick. Contrast that to his play on Karthus versus Flamengo. He certainly was not able to get the ball rolling. With Royal Youth back against the wall, he will be a defining factor in turning it around to tie up Brazil and Flamengo today. Speaking of Royal Youth, Law is standing by with their support.
Thanks, guys. Laure here, and I'm joined by Royal Youth Support Tournament. Thank you very much for joining me. The first day didn't go as expected for you, as I can imagine, but have you been able to identify why things went wrong?
Like, our early game was pretty good against Dawn, first of all, and I think we lacked the mid game. Our composition was like snowballing pretty hard. We shouldn't go late against Dawn's comp, and our team is more like of a snowball team. Like, we build up our early game pretty well and then snowball the enemy to like 20-25 minutes and finish the game at that minute. And if our game goes to like 30 minutes, we kind of lack on like decision making, I would say. So I think we have to snowball more harder than we did against Damwon, and then we can win for sure. Yeah.
What about the second game against Flamengo?
Second game, like, I don't know what happened, but I think we underestimated our enemy, I would say, and our draft didn't go as planned as we planned as well. So I'd say it's our fault for sure, but like a part of the loss is our draft as well.
You mentioned that you were able to challenge Damwon in the early game. This team is known to adapt really well. Do you think you'll be able to do the same thing today and maybe win against them?
If we did it once, I think we can do it twice as well. So yeah, I'm pretty confident.
That's great to hear. And then what would be your main focus for today? Because you're 0-2 right now. This is do or die. You have to win both games.
Yeah, so first of all, like for sure, we want to win all games today. Like, we're going to do our best. But our main focus game is going to be against Flamengo. Like, we have to win against Flamengo for sure, and if they lose against Damwon as well, we're gonna go 1-1 against them, so we can play a tiebreaker, and from there on we're gonna make it through the groups.
Awesome. How is the mood within the team right now?
After the losses, like, everyone was pretty sad and frustrated. I mean, that's reasonable, but I would say after the 2 days after the losses, I think everyone came back to the mood. Like, everyone's positive, and I think everyone is believing that we can make it.
I hope you had the nice mental reset you needed. I wish you good luck on today. Thank you very much for the interview. Now back to you guys.
Thank you very much. It's important to remember how crucial Tolerant and the bot lane was for Royal Youth last time they faced Damwon. A very interesting interview, very earnest, very realistic, but also quite frank. Like, hey, we understand the challenge that is Damwon. We're not really looking at them. We're looking at Flamengo. We want to beat them. We want the tiebreak, and we want to win that.
And kind of like expanding into a larger context and digging into Royal Youth's storyline, especially coming from Tolerant, because I agree with you. It was quite like frank, a bit humble, kind of really just focused. Tolerant had a reputation of kind of being the bad boy. A lot of teams kind of tossed him aside and didn't think that his attitude was worth it. He's definitely gone a long ways to fix that, and I think that proves how much it's paid off that he's with Royal Youth and here going through a support like Wolf in their finals to make this type of international burst. So I just did want to take a moment to congratulate Tolerant for making it to this stage.
And I think team-wide as well, like everything he's alluding to, that's a very good place to be. We think our mistakes were on our terms. It's very insular. Like, we can do it again. We fix this, this, and this.
As opposed to extras.
And it's also the positives and negatives. Like, our draft isn't what we wanted, but also like the early game is what we wanted, and we're not going to shy away from that.
We've actually got some clips actually exactly how Royal Youth attacked Damwon's bottom lane from the last time that these two teams played. And, you know, there was a lot of jokes on social about H2K Nuclear has rejoined the server here in Europe, but you have to give credit to Royal Youth. They built up some advantages, and I was getting a little nervous for Damwon when Royal Youth were picking up multiple kills of the first 10 to 15 minutes.
And it's not just making sure that when they are picking up these kills, that it's translating into actual map leads, that it translates into taking Drakes, it translates into taking towers, getting Baron set up, because ultimately what happened is you did have a lot of these picks, but nothing else came from it. Anytime Damwon did take a shot of you, it was really a sucker punch. They knock you flat on your ass, and then they took everything away.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing when you're kind of punching up in terms of class of opponent. I think the lower team coming into this one, Royal Youth, I think certainly aren't the favorites, but you feel like you have to fight tooth and nail for every advantage, and the fights are so difficult that you don't have time, you don't have HP or mana to go for a turret, to go for a dragon. It's like, oh, we killed them. Okay, we have to reset now. Like, we have to go back.
Well, let's talk a little bit about one of the other strengths here. Of course, you covered Nuguri's Vlad a little earlier. I want to talk about Mammoth from Royal Youth and this top lane matchup and what some of our expectations are going to be. What did we think of Mammoth's first performance? And, you know, how is he going to have to upgrade here to try and take on Nuguri, Jim?
I think he will have some room to play with. This is a guy that traditionally gets played around. We had the interview and we saw some stats very much earlier about Closer. His Kiana in that game looked good. And if he can link up with his jungler, Nuguri is an incredibly good top laner. But in literally Frost segment, it's like the Vladimir. You scale up, you give them time. So I think he will have space to play with.
It's just a different responsibility. The other two top laners in this, and Arma and Robo, just need to survive. That's all you need to do. And Nuguri eats these kids for breakfast right now. It is an uphill battle. And so if you can just neutralize and be just as impactful in team fights, you're not trying to spec something to go 1v1 off into a side lane or go into a 1-4 formation. You just need to survive and be worthwhile. So start figuring out what those tools are, what those champions are that can make a team fight impact.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to theorize with me. We're nearing picks and bans. We know the uphill battle that Royal Youth are facing, and we do have the draft from last time, looking at the likes of that Renekton first pick that didn't really work out. What would you like to see from Royal Youth and what pivots, maybe from draft, maybe from playstyle, to increase their odds and swing things in their favor for a win against M1?
Well, I think the number one thing that I want to see is them get their hands back on Kiana, but I don't think it's going to happen. But an early proactive jungler. Everything really does start with Closer. Yes, he does attack the top side of the map more so than the bot side. We'll see if he changes that up, seeing that Nuclear and Barrel can be broken. But first and foremost, you have to get an early game jungler for Closer, or a level 6 jungler for Closer.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. Whether you do want to go top side or bot side, I think you do have options there. But against Damwon, if you're not winning early, you're not winning late. So you just have to get something done. I think whether it's the Elise, the Gragas, stay away from Echo. I'm not actually sure if we've seen it again or if it's still just 0%, 0%
They just backed off of it.
Yeah, nobody's touched it. But yeah, not that.
Let's turn our attention now to Damwon, because obviously the expectation is that Royal have to adjust more to win. But Nuclear and Barrel, they did get picked on yesterday, both by Flamengo and by Royal. So seeing this Kai'Sa, seeing this Leona, do you want to see some changes from them to go back to their more reserved or maybe defensive playstyle?
Yes, in all honesty, they shouldn't be falling behind as far as they were in their first game versus Royal Youth, and I think it was really on their own volition. Like, they were being aggressive, they were forcing the fights and getting punished for it. It's not like things were coming to them and they were getting dove underneath their turret, and there's a conversation to be had, like, were they set up for success? Were they communicated to properly? And stuff like that. It really was just off their own volition. Leona has an E button and she goes in and she can't get out, and if you do that at the wrong time, it's entirely on you.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. I don't think you need to change up the champion picks at all. It was simply them opting in to take those fights. So you could run the same draft, and I would just be like, oh, they'll probably play this one a bit more defensive.
I sincerely hope we get to discuss the decision-making and see exactly who comes out on top after this game. Worlds is the stage to make a name for yourself, and today, these new talents look to continue their run. Let's see what happens as Damwon take on Royal.